Frank, as a composer, you came to it quite late. What kept you? What delayed you?
Well, I came to music in the sense of my first opus one, my first formal piece, rather late. But remember, as a child, I was banking in many, many sound impressions. And I remember at the age of 10 on our little farm down in Tipperary, my mother had 100 pigs, free-ranging pigs, and 10 sows there. And at feeding time, coming along there was an orchestra for me of 110 pigs. And you had the highest piccolo down to the deepest tuba.
In terms of developing as a composer, tell me about your path and the path that brought you to your first opus.
I think a lot of young composers, they need language. They need the help. They have to compose a song or a chorus, a text. The text triggers off something.
You have commented, Frank, that no composer has dealt in a satisfactory way with our past. What do you mean by that?
Two things. I used to argue that it was a good thing for me not to have had any Irish musical giants, Irish great composers. We didn't have them. We talk about Charles Villiers Stanford, the Irish Brahms in the 19th century. We talk about a couple of lads there with opera, fairly harmless stuff, and John Field, who went off to be buried in Moscow main cemetery, and a couple of 20th century people and so on. But I didn't have any giants to stand on their shoulders to help me. And well, it did release my own energies, but it also was difficult. So we don't have that long tradition that the continental nations have.
What is your connection with Ireland? Because your music seems very Irish to me, and you do tap into that wealth of folklore and of Irish history.
Ireland is a creation in my mind. I have invented my Ireland. I had to. And it's lumps of 20th and 21st century and 6th century. Suivna Galt, Ireland also. It has to do, of course, I mean, as I met the great George Ligeti for the first time, colleague of mine in Hamburg, he didn't want to talk about music, he wanted to talk about the Book of Kells with me. I have to have my Ireland, my created Ireland, in my head, and it certainly comes out in the work, I think.
Frank, your most recent piece, A Dark Song, can you tell me about this piece?
It's my newest piece, and I'm delighted that it's the quickest piece I've ever had premiered. The ink is just dry off the page. It's a song, and it is dark. Auron Dorcha. Why is it dark? Among other reasons, because you have the most beautiful, shallow, treacly, dark brown toffee textures down at the bottom of the bass clarinet. You have several octaves then right up to the top, to the shrieking, whimpering, yowling lamento right up at the top. So you have this incredible repertoire. It's really, in a huge, long, deep pipe, it is an orchestra in itself.
We live in an era where people like to label music, new music, art music, and in a sense there's no perfect label for your music. How can you describe it?
Well, in English, we don't like to call it art music, but it is. It's art music. And it is as much Irish art as Irish poetry, film, sculpture, painting. Now, I happen to use time. I'm a time artist. Some of the other arts are also, you could say all the arts exist in time, but music is peculiarly so. So my art is sicut fumus. It's like smoke, and it's gone very soon. Beckett spoke about, in fact, I said that little line of his, the light gleams and is gone. That's a perfect image for music, and for Irish music, and for my music, which is, we won't be insular and labour it too much, the little adjective, but it has to be spun out of my entrails.
You've covered a very broad range of music over the last 30, 40 years, Frank. Is there anything left that you'd like to do? Is there any new direction you'd like to go in, maybe?
In the coming year, I hope to have two, it's very exciting, two new works here in Ireland. One is my violin concerto. I'm very, very excited about that. We hope to have that November 2012. And the other is a new choral work of mine. You see, we're back to vocal, we're back to the text, we're back to, and there I become a poet. I'm not a poet, but I am. So these are 8 haikus by Frank Corcoran, writing the haikus, and I'm very chuffed about that. And then they branch out into at least 8-part polyphony for choir. So that will be coming up next year too. And I'm going to give you one little haiku by Frank Corcoran, the haikuist. They're all beautiful, and of course, for me, not as a poet, but they acted straight away as a trigger, as a sound trigger, as vocal, as choral trigger. Now listen to this one, for instance. Through our Milky Way glides and flexes and ripples old solar system. Oh, this is terrific stuff to launch my choir.